"I can't live without a man," said the Apache girl. The rancher let her stay. The sun hung low over the dry, dusty desert, painting the horizon in shades of orange and gold. The wind carried a faint scent of sagebrush and dry earth. In this vast, lonely landscape, the old cattle ranch stood like a small island of life. The wooden fences were weathered and worn, but sturdy. The cattle moved slowly across the dusty land, lowing softly, while Samuel, the rancher, went about his work, as he had done for years. He had built this ranch with his own hands, piece by piece, over decades. Life here was hard, simple, and predictable, and he liked it that way. He didn't need anyone to complicate it. He had the land, the cattle, and his quiet routine. But on this particular day, that routine was about to change. A figure appeared far off in the distance, moving slowly along the dirt road that led to the ranch. At first, Samuel thought it might be a traveler, or perhaps someone lost in the desert, but as the figure drew closer, he could see it was a young woman. She walked with a mixture of exhaustion and determination, her steps unsteady in the scorching heat. Her clothes were worn, dusty and torn in places, but she carried herself with a quiet dignity, as if she had endured more than anyone could imagine. Samuel's curiosity was piqued. Travelers sometimes came through this area, but it was rare to see someone walking alone across miles of unforgiving desert. When the young woman finally reached the gate, she paused, looking up at the ranch house with eyes that reflected both fear and hope. She looked at Samuel with a mixture of hesitation and courage. Her dark hair, tangled from travel, fell over her shoulders, and her eyes seemed to hold a story she wasn't ready to tell yet. Samuel watched her closely, unsure if he should greet her or ignore her. It wasn't common for strangers to appear unannounced at his property, and he had learned long ago to be careful. Still, something about her presence made him put aside his caution for a moment. He walked toward her slowly, his boots crunching on the dry dirt. The young woman stopped a few feet away, breathing heavily, her hands trembling slightly. "Please, I have nowhere else to go," she said, her voice soft but steady. There was a plea in her words that Samuel couldn't ignore. She looked fragile, but there was an underlying strength that suggested she had survived hardships most people couldn't imagine. I can't live without a man to help me survive," she added, her voice barely above a whisper. Samuel felt a mixture of surprise and concern. Her words weren't about romance or love. They were about survival, about needing someone to protect her and give her a chance to live in safety. In that moment, he realized she was asking for more than just shelter. She was asking for a chance to exist in a world that had been harsh and unkind to her. Samuel studied her carefully, noting the dirt smudges on her face, the worn leather of her shoes, and the tired lines etched into her young face. He wondered how long she had been traveling and what hardships had brought her here. The desert was not forgiving, and it took strength and determination to walk miles under the blazing sun without rest. He could see that she was not weak, despite her appearance. There was a quiet determination in her posture, a sense of endurance that spoke of someone who had faced more than her share of challenges. He decided to speak, his voice calm but firm. "You can come in, but you have to follow my rules. This isn't a place for idlers or troublemakers. You'll work for your keep." The young woman's eyes lit up with gratitude, and she nodded quickly. "Thank you," she whispered. I can work. I'll do anything." Her voice was earnest, filled with relief and hope. Samuel nodded, feeling a sense of responsibility he hadn't felt in years. He led her through the gate and into the ranch yard, showing her the small wooden house where he lived. The ranch smelled of hay, leather, and the faint smoke of a cooking fire. The cattle lowed in the distance, and the sun cast long shadows over the land. Samuel could see that she was taking in everything, the fences, the animals, the open sky, absorbing it all like a sponge. He showed her the basics of the ranch, pointing out where she could find water, where the tools were kept, and how to help with feeding the animals. She listened intently, nodding and asking questions when necessary. Her curiosity was sharp, and her willingness to learn impressed Samuel. He realized that she was not just asking for help. She wanted to be useful, to prove herself, to earn her place. As the day passed, he watched her move with a mixture of clumsiness and determination, tending to the smaller chores with care. There was a sense of purpose in the way she handled herself, even though she was clearly exhausted from her journey. It was clear that she had survived much more than just the desert. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples, Samuel offered her a simple meal. They sat on the porch, the warm glow of the fire flickering across their faces. She ate quickly but carefully, savoring the warmth and nourishment. For the first time in days, she felt safe, and it showed in the way she relaxed slightly in his presence. Samuel watched her closely, sensing that her words, "I can't live without a man," were not a complaint, but a statement of survival. She had been alone for so long that she had learned to rely on no one but herself. But now she needed someone to help her navigate the challenges of life, to provide a sense of stability she had never known. As night fell, the desert quieted, leaving only the sounds of the wind, the distant calls of owls, and the occasional lowing of the cattle. Samuel could see the fear and exhaustion in her eyes, but also a flicker of hope. She was cautious yet curious, taking in her surroundings and trying to understand this new world she had entered. Samuel knew that trust would not come easily, and that she would need time to adjust to life on the ranch. But there was something about her, a quiet resilience, that made him believe she could adapt, that she could survive and even thrive in this harsh, unforgiving land. As they sat together under the wide expanse of the desert sky, Samuel reflected on his own life. He had lived alone for many years, finding comfort in the simplicity and predictability of the ranch, but there was a loneliness in him that he rarely admitted, a sense of longing for connection that he had pushed aside. Seeing the young woman before him stirred something unfamiliar, a desire to protect, to nurture, to offer a safe place in a world that had been anything but kind. He realized that letting her stay was not just an act of kindness, but a chance for both of them to find companionship and understanding in a world that often lacked both. By the end of the evening, Samuel had made his decision. She would stay, at least for now, not as a burden, but as someone willing to work, to learn, and to prove herself. And in turn, she would find a place of safety, a home where she could rest, recover, and begin to heal from the hardships that had brought her here. As she settled into the small room he had prepared, the young woman felt a sense of relief she hadn't experienced in months. For the first time in a long while, she felt that she belonged somewhere, even if only for a moment. The ranch, with its wide-open spaces, its hard work, and its quiet strength, offered her a chance to start again. Outside, the stars began to twinkle in the clear desert sky. The wind whispered through the sagebrush, carrying the scent of the earth and the promise of a new beginning. Samuel looked out over his land, thinking about the unexpected visitor who had arrived that day. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that the choice to let her stay was the right one. Life on the ranch would never be exactly the same, and perhaps it didn't need to be. There was room for change, for growth, and for the quiet bond that could develop between two people brought together by circumstance and need. In the stillness of that first night, the desert seemed to hold its breath. A young woman had arrived at the ranch, seeking more than just shelter. She was seeking life, safety, and a place to belong. And a rancher who had long lived alone had opened his doors and his heart, offering her a chance to prove that even in the harshest landscapes, survival and connection were possible. The journey was just beginning, and both of them, in their own ways, were ready to face it together. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the desert, sending long golden rays across the ranch. The air was crisp and dry, carrying the faint scent of hay and earth. Lanny woke early, before the first light, feeling a strange mix of nervousness and excitement. She had never lived on a ranch before. Her life until now had been full of moving from place to place, surviving one day at a time. But here, for the first time, she felt the possibility of stability. She got out of the small cot Samuel had offered her and quietly opened the door. The ranch was already waking up with the soft sounds of animals stretching and the occasional distant crow of a rooster. She stepped out into the yard and noticed Samuel already working. He was at the fence line, checking for loose boards and making sure the gates were secure. His movements were calm and precise, the result of years of experience. Lonnie watched him quietly for a moment, noticing how effortlessly he seemed to know what needed to be done. She realized that ranch life was not easy, but it was honest and predictable. She wanted to belong here, to learn, to prove that she could contribute. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to face her first day of work. Samuel noticed her watching and called out, "Good morning."
"I hope you're ready to work today. There's a lot to do."
His voice was firm but not unkind. Lonnie nodded eagerly. "Yes, I am," she replied softly. She didn't want to admit that she had no idea where to start. Samuel handed her a bucket and pointed toward the water troughs. "Start with the animals.
Make sure they have water and that the troughs are clean. I'll show you how it's done the first time."
Lonnie followed him, watching closely as he demonstrated how to lift the heavy buckets, pour the water without spilling, and check the troughs for debris. At first, the work was harder than she had expected. Her arms ached from carrying the water, and her hands quickly became raw from the rough wood and metal. She stumbled a few times, spilling water and nearly dropping a bucket, but Samuel didn't scold her. Instead, he showed her patiently, repeating the steps until she got it right. Lonnie felt a sense of pride with every small success. She was learning, adapting, and surviving, just as she had always done. By mid-morning, she had developed a rhythm, moving from trough to trough, filling them, and ensuring each animal had water. After finishing the trough, Samuel guided her toward the barn. "Next, we need to check the feed.
The cattle eat twice a day, and the horses once in the morning and once at night. You'll learn quickly if you pay attention."
He handed her a small sack of grain and demonstrated how to pour it carefully into each feeding trough. Lonnie followed his instructions, feeling more confident with each step. The animals began to notice her presence. A few curious calves approached, sniffing her hands as she poured the grain. She laughed softly, feeling a connection with them. It was a small, simple joy, but it reminded her that life could be gentle and kind, even in the middle of the harsh desert. As the day went on, Samuel introduced her to more tasks. She learned to sweep the barn, mend small tiers in the fences, and even ride a horse slowly round the paddock. At first, she was hesitant, afraid of losing balance or startling the animals. But Samuel stayed close, encouraging her gently. "It's okay to be careful," he said.
"Just take your time. You'll get the hang of it."
Lonnie felt a rush of accomplishment when she managed to ride a horse around the paddock without falling. She laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. It was more than just learning new skills, it was a sense of belonging, a feeling she had never experienced before. During the lunch break, Samuel and Lonnie sat on the porch, eating sandwiches and drinking water. The sun was high in the sky, warming their skin, and the wind carried a gentle rustle through the nearby trees. Samuel watched Lonnie carefully. She was quiet but observant, asking questions about the ranch, the animals, and the desert. He realized that her curiosity was a strength, not a distraction. "You ask good questions," he said, finally. "It shows you want to learn. That's important here. You can't survive if you don't pay attention." Lonnie nodded, grateful for his encouragement. For the first time, she felt that someone believed in her abilities, someone who saw her as capable rather than weak. The afternoon was spent checking fences along the edge of the property. Lonnie struggled at first to lift the heavy wooden panels and hammer the nails, but Samuel stayed by her side, guiding her hands when necessary. She began to understand that ranch life was not just about strength. It was about patience, attention, and persistence. Every task, no matter how small, mattered. She felt proud when she completed her first fence repair on her own. Samuel clapped his hands once and smiled. "Good job. You're catching on faster than I expected." Lonnie's face lit up with a smile. Praise was rare in her life, and she savored it quietly. By late afternoon, the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and purple. The workday was long, but Lonnie felt a growing sense of satisfaction. She had learned a lot in just one day, and more importantly, she felt useful. Samuel began to talk more with her, sharing small stories about his life on the ranch, the challenges he had faced, and the routines he followed. Lonnie listened closely, absorbing every word. There was wisdom in his voice, a sense of experience that made her respect him even more. She realized that staying on this ranch meant more than just survival. It meant learning a new way of life, a way that valued hard work, patience, and respect. As the evening approached, Samuel taught Lonnie how to feed the horses and check on the cattle one last time before nightfall. The animals seemed calmer now, familiar with her presence. Lonnie had earned their trust, even if slowly. She felt a small sense of pride in knowing that she could care for them properly. Afterward, she helped Samuel light the small fire near the porch for cooking dinner. The smell of roasting meat and fresh bread filled the air. They ate together in silence at first, enjoying the warmth and the food, before talking quietly about the day. Lonnie felt comfortable in this quiet routine, something she had not known for a long time. That night, as Lonnie lay on her cot, she thought about the day. She had been nervous in the morning, unsure if she could handle the ranch work, unsure if Samuel would accept her, but now she felt a glimmer of confidence. She had survived her first day and learned more than she could have imagined. More importantly, she felt a sense of hope that had been missing for months. The ranch was not just a place to stay. It was a place to belong, a place where she could build a future. She realized that her words from the day before, "I can't live without a man," were no longer just a statement of fear. They were a promise to herself that she would survive, learn, and grow, and that she would not give up no matter how hard the road ahead might be. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, quiet and vast under the moonlight. The wind whispered softly through the trees, and the animals settled for the night. Lonnie felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. The work had been hard. The sun had been hot, and her muscles ached, but she had faced it all. She had survived her first real day on the ranch, and for the first time in a long while she believed that she could continue to survive and perhaps even thrive with Samuel's guidance and support. As sleep began to take her, Lonnie thought about the days to come. She would continue to learn, continue to work, and continue to earn her place on the ranch. There would be challenges, no doubt, but she felt ready to face them. She had discovered a strength within herself that she hadn't known existed, a quiet resilience that matched the harsh beauty of the desert around her. And with Samuel by her side, patient, guiding, and watching over her, she felt that she had a chance, not just to survive, but to belong, to grow, and to find a life she could call her own. That first night on the ranch ended with a quiet sense of accomplishment. Lonnie had learned the value of hard work, the importance of patience, and the simple joy of earning one's place in the world. She had taken the first steps toward becoming part of the ranch, part of a life that was hard but rewarding, lonely but full of potential. And as the stars shone brightly over the desert, she knew that tomorrow would bring new lessons, new challenges, and new opportunities to prove that she belonged. The next morning, the desert was quiet, except for the soft rustling of leaves and the occasional lowing of cattle. Lonnie woke up feeling more confident than the day before. She had learned so much about the ranch in just one day, and she could already see herself becoming part of this life. But there was something else she carried inside her, a quiet weight she hadn't shared with anyone. Samuel had been kind and patient, guiding her and teaching her the ways of the ranch, but he didn't know her full story yet. She wasn't ready to speak about it. Not today. Not yet. She rose quietly, stretching her sore muscles from the work of yesterday. Her body ached in places she hadn't realized could ache, but the soreness felt good. It was proof that she had worked hard and had survived. She stepped outside and took in the early morning air. The sky was painted in pale shades of pink and gold, and the sun had not yet climbed too high. A few birds sang from the distant trees, and the desert seemed calm and welcoming. For the first time in a long while, Lonnie felt that she could breathe without fear. Samuel was already outside, tending to the horses. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. "Good morning," he said, his voice steady and warm. "I hope you slept well." Lonnie nodded, feeling a small warmth in her chest. I did,
Thank you.
she replied softly. She knew that Samuel had given her more than just shelter. He had given her trust, guidance, and a chance to feel safe after months of uncertainty.
Today, she wanted to prove herself again, not just to him, but to herself. The day's work was more challenging than yesterday.
Samuel handed her a list of chores, including checking the fences along the northern edge of the property, feeding the livestock, and helping repair a broken water trough. Lonnie followed him closely, absorbing every instruction. She had learned that ranch life required more than just strength. It required careful attention, patience, and the ability to think ahead. Each task, no matter how small, mattered to the safety and well-being of the animals. She worked diligently, careful not to make mistakes, and with each completed chore, she felt a sense of pride growing inside her. By mid-morning, after hours of hard work, Samuel decided it was time for a break. He led Lonnie to a shaded area under a large mesquite tree, where he had set up a small wooden bench. They sat together, drinking water and watching the cattle graze. For a while they were quiet, letting the sounds of the ranch surround them. Then Samuel spoke, breaking the silence.
You've done well these past 2 days. You're learning quickly, and I can see you're not afraid of hard work.
That's rare these days. Lonnie felt her cheeks warm at his words. Praise had been rare in her life, and hearing it now made her feel valued and seen. After a moment, she hesitated, then asked softly, "Samuel, can I tell you something?" He looked at her, sensing the seriousness in her voice.
Of course, he said.
"Whatever it is, you can tell me." Lonnie took a deep breath. She had carried this secret with her for months, ever since leaving her home.
I haven't always had a safe place, she began, her voice trembling slightly. My family, we were separated.
I've been alone for a long time. Sometimes I had to hide, sometimes I had to run.
I didn't know who to trust, and I wasn't sure I would survive. She paused, tears forming in her eyes.
Samuel listened silently, giving her space to speak. She continued, her voice steadier now. When I said I can't live without a man, I didn't mean I needed someone to love me. I meant I needed someone to protect me, to help me survive. I was scared I wouldn't find anyone I could trust, and I needed a safe place. That's why I came here. Samuel nodded slowly, understanding her words. He realized that her plea had not been about romance or dependency. It had been about survival and trust. Lonnie had carried a heavy burden, and she had finally found someone willing to give her a chance. Samuel reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of reassurance. You've had a hard life, Lonnie.
But you're here now, and you're safe. You don't have to face everything alone anymore. I'm not just letting you stay because I have to. I'm letting you stay because I see your strength, your determination, and your willingness to work.
Lanny felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time in a long while, she felt that someone truly understood her. Not just her words, but the experiences and struggles behind them. After their conversation, they returned to the chores. The day continued, with Lonnie learning new skills. Samuel taught her how to repair fences more efficiently, how to check the health of the cattle, and even how to move a stubborn horse safely.
Lonnie struggled at times, her muscles tired and her hands scraped from the rough work, but she refused to give up.
Each challenge she faced reminded her of why she had come here. She wanted to prove to herself that she could survive, that she could learn, and that she could belong. Around midday, Samuel decided to take a small break and have lunch under the shade of the barn. Lonnie sat quietly, enjoying a simple meal of bread, cheese, and fruit. As they ate, she noticed how Samuel observed her, not in a critical way, but with a watchful care, as if he wanted to make sure she was safe and learning. She appreciated his patience and quiet guidance. It was different from the fear and uncertainty she had lived with for months. Here she felt that she could grow, that she could become stronger and more capable. After lunch, they faced a new challenge. A section of the fence along the northern pasture had been damaged by a recent windstorm. Samuel instructed Lanny to help him repair it. At first, she felt nervous. The wood was heavy and the nails were difficult to hammer into place, but Samuel stayed close, guiding her hands when needed and offering encouragement.
"You're doing fine," he said. "Just take it slow and steady." Lonnie focused on each movement, careful to follow his instructions.
With patience and determination, they worked together to repair the fence. By the time they finished, the sun was beginning to sink toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the land. As they cleaned up their tools, Samuel spoke again, this time in a quieter tone. "You've come a long way in just a few days, Lonnie.
You're learning not just the work, but the ways of living here. That's more important than anything else. Living on a ranch isn't just about doing chores. It's about understanding the land, the animals, and yourself." Lonnie nodded, feeling the truth in his words.
She realized that this life, though hard, was teaching her more than survival skills. It was teaching her patience, resilience, and self-respect. That evening, as the sky turned deep orange and purple, they fed the animals for the last time and prepared for the night.
Lonnie felt tired but satisfied. Her muscles ached and her hands were rough from work, but she felt a deep sense of accomplishment.
For the first time in months, she felt that she was building a life she could belong to.
She had come to the ranch seeking safety and guidance, but she was finding something more: confidence, purpose, and a place where she could grow. Before going to bed, Lonnie took a moment to walk around the ranch, observing the animals resting and the land settling into quiet darkness. She thought about the conversation she had with Samuel earlier and the weight she had lifted by sharing her story. It was not easy to speak about her past, but it had brought her closer to Samuel and made her feel more connected to this new place. She realized that trust was not given lightly. It had to be earned and nurtured, and she was willing to do both. That night, as she lay in her small room, Lonnie reflected on the days she had lived before arriving at the ranch. The fear, the loneliness, and the constant uncertainty had been exhausting. But now she felt hope. She had found a place where she could be herself, where she could work hard, learn, and survive. She had found someone who believed in her and who gave her the chance to start over. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to dream, not of escaping, but of living, growing, and thriving in a place she could call home. As the moon rose high in the sky, casting its silver light across the desert, Lonnie closed her eyes and whispered a quiet promise to herself. She would continue to work hard, continue to learn, and continue to prove that she belonged here. She would not let fear control her life, and she would embrace the challenges of this new life. She knew there would be difficulties ahead, but she also knew that she was stronger than she had ever realized. With Samuel's guidance and her own determination, she believed she could face whatever the future held. Outside, the desert was calm, peaceful, and full of possibility. The wind whispered softly through the trees, carrying the promise of a new beginning. Lonnie had taken another step toward belonging, toward survival, and toward building a life that was no longer just about enduring, but about living fully and with purpose. The next morning, the desert seemed calm, almost peaceful, as if nothing could disturb the quiet rhythm of the ranch. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, painting the landscape with soft shades of gold and pink. Lonnie woke early, as she had done for the past few days, stretching her sore muscles and taking a deep breath of the fresh desert air. She felt stronger now, more confident in her ability to handle the chores and responsibilities of ranch life. Yet, she also felt a sense of anticipation. There was a strange tension in the air, and the animals seemed restless as they moved through the pens and pastures. Samuel, already outside, was checking the fences along the northern pasture. His brow was furrowed as he inspected the lines of wood and wire. Lonnie approached him cautiously, noticing the serious look on his face. "Good morning," she said softly. "Is something wrong?" Samuel shook his head, though his expression remained tense.
"The weather has been unpredictable lately," he said. "The storm from the south might reach us today. It could get bad, and we need to be ready. I want you to stay close and help wherever I need you."
Lonnie nodded, her heart quickening with a mix of nervousness and determination.
She had learned to handle hard work, but she realized that this day would require more than skill.
It would require courage.
By mid-morning, the clouds began to gather on the horizon. They were dark, heavy, and low, moving quickly across the desert sky.
Samuel and Lanny worked quickly, reinforcing the fences and securing the livestock. The wind picked up, rustling the dry leaves and sending small dust clouds across the land. The animals sensed the change in the air and became more restless. Horses neighed nervously, cattle moved closer together, and even the smaller animals scurried for shelter. Lonnie could feel the tension rising, and she focused on her tasks, determined not to let fear take over. Samuel handed her a hammer and a few nails.
"We need to secure the gates," he said.
"If the storm hits hard, we don't want the cattle escaping or the fences breaking." Lonnie worked quickly, hammering the nails into place, while keeping an eye on the dark clouds gathering in the distance. She noticed the first drops of rain beginning to fall, light at first, but growing heavier by the minute. The wind picked up, whipping around the ranch with increasing strength. Dust and leaves swirled in the air, and the animals grew more agitated. Lonnie took a deep breath, steadying herself. She had faced fear before, but this was different. This was not just hard work. It was a test of survival. As the storm hit fully, rain poured down in sheets, turning the dusty paths into mud and creating small rivulets across the ranch. The wind howled through the trees, bending them nearly to the ground, and the sound of the animals calling to each other filled the air. Samuel shouted instructions over the roar of the storm, guiding Lanny to help secure the weaker fences and move animals to safer areas. Lanny ran through the mud, pulling gates closed and helping the animals move, feeling the cold rain soak her through. Her hands were raw, her clothes heavy with water, and yet she didn't stop. She knew that the animals depended on her, that Samuel depended on her, and that failure was not an option. In the midst of the chaos, a young calf wandered into a narrow ditch, struggling to climb out as the rainwater flowed around it. Lonnie spotted it immediately, her heart racing. She called out to Samuel, but the wind carried his voice away. Without hesitation, she ran to the calf, slipping on the muddy ground as she reached it. She grasped it gently but firmly, speaking to it softly as she tried to guide it out of the water. The calf panicked, slipping and struggling against her hold, but Lonnie's determination did not waver. She dug her heels into the mud, using all her strength to pull the calf to safety. Finally, drenched and exhausted, she managed to lift the calf onto solid ground. She looked up to see Samuel running toward her, concern etched on his face.
"You did well!"
Samuel shouted over the storm, his voice filled with both relief and admiration.
"That was brave, Lonnie! You saved it!"
Lonnie's chest heaved as she caught her breath, her clothes plastered to her skin, her muscles aching from the effort. She felt a rush of pride and relief. She had faced fear head-on and had not faltered. For the first time, she understood the true meaning of courage, not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. The storm continued for several hours, and Lonnie stayed by Samuel's side, helping wherever she was needed. They moved animals into more secure pens, reinforced fences, and repaired damaged structures as best they could. The rain fell relentlessly, soaking everything and turning the ranch into a slippery, challenging landscape. Lonnie's hands were sore from gripping ropes and pushing gates, her body exhausted from constant movement, yet she refused to give up. Each task she completed strengthened her confidence, and each obstacle she overcame reminded her that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. By late afternoon, the storm began to subside. The rain slowed to a drizzle and the wind eased, leaving the ranch wet but intact. Lonnie stood next to Samuel, both of them breathing heavily, soaked to the bone and covered in mud. They looked over the animals, checking that everyone was safe and unharmed. Samuel nodded, a small smile breaking through his serious expression. "We made it," he said quietly. "The ranch is still standing, the animals are safe, and you did incredible today." Lonnie felt a warm glow of satisfaction despite her exhaustion. She had faced one of the hardest challenges of her life and had proven to herself, and to Samuel, that she could endure and contribute meaningfully. As they began the slow process of cleaning up, drying off the animals, and mending broken fences, Samuel spoke again, this time with a tone of reflection. Lonnie, today showed me something important.
You're not just willing to work hard. You're brave, resourceful, and capable of handling challenges I didn't think anyone could manage. Life on this ranch isn't easy, and storms like this will come again. But I know now that you can handle it.
Lanny smiled faintly, feeling the truth in his words. It was not easy to hear praise, but she welcomed it now, understanding that it reflected her growth, her determination, and her resilience. When the sun finally began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red, Lonnie and Samuel worked together to complete the last of the chores. The animals were fed, the fences repaired, and the gates secured for the night. Lonnie's muscles ached, and her clothes were still damp, but she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had survived the storm, helped protect the animals, and proven to herself that she could face adversity without fear. More than that, she had earned Samuel's trust in a way she hadn't thought possible just a few days ago. As night fell, the desert quieted once more. The air was fresh and clean, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and sagebrush. Lonnie finally changed into dry clothes Samuel had provided, grateful for the small comfort after the long, exhausting day. They sat together on the porch, sharing a simple meal of bread, stew, and water. Lonnie was quiet at first, savoring the warmth of the food and the satisfaction of a day well spent. Samuel spoke softly, sharing stories of past storms, challenges he had faced on the ranch, and lessons learned from years of working the land. Lanny listened attentively, realizing that these stories were more than just entertainment. They were lessons in resilience, patience, and understanding the rhythm of life on the ranch. That night, as Lanny lay on her cot, she reflected on the day's events. She had faced fear, danger, and exhaustion, yet she had survived and even thrived. The storm had tested her courage and resourcefulness, and she had risen to the challenge. She realized that life on the ranch was not just about work. It was about learning to trust, to act decisively, and to face challenges with determination. She felt a new sense of confidence, a quiet strength growing inside her that she had never known before. Outside, the stars shone brightly in the clear desert sky, casting silver light across the ranch. The wind whispered softly through the trees, and the animals settled into the night, calm and safe. Lonnie closed her eyes and allowed herself to rest, knowing that she had taken another step toward belonging, survival, and growth. She understood now that courage was not about being fearless. It was about taking action when it mattered most. She had proven to herself and to Samuel that she could be relied upon, that she could face adversity with strength, and that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. The storm had passed, but its lessons remained. Lonnie felt a deep sense of pride, not just in surviving, but in learning, adapting, and contributing. Samuel's trust and respect had grown, and she knew that her place on the ranch was becoming more secure, not just as a worker, but as someone valued and capable. She allowed herself a small smile, realizing that the challenges ahead would be difficult, but no longer impossible. With determination, courage, and a growing sense of belonging, Lonnie was ready to face whatever came next. The morning after the storm, the desert felt fresh and alive. The rain from the previous day had washed the dust from the air, leaving the landscape sparkling under the sun. Lonnie stepped outside and took a deep breath. The earth smelled sweet and clean, a mix of wet soil and desert plants. She stretched, feeling the soreness from yesterday's work and the storm's chaos. But there was also a quiet satisfaction. She had survived, helped protect the animals, and proved herself in ways she had never imagined. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace. Samuel was already at work, moving along the fence lines to inspect the repairs. His steps were confident and deliberate, a steady presence in the open landscape. Lonnie joined him, carrying a small bucket with tools. They worked side by side, not speaking much at first, letting the rhythm of their work speak for itself. There was a sense of familiarity now, a quiet bond formed from shared labor and mutual respect. Samuel noticed how efficiently Lonnie handled the tools, how carefully she inspected the fences, and how attentive she was to the animals' needs. He couldn't help but feel a sense of pride.
She had grown so quickly in just a few days, transforming from a weary traveler into a capable and reliable helper.
As they worked, Samuel finally spoke. "Lonnie, I want you to know something," he said, his voice calm but serious. "You've proven yourself over and over again. You're not just someone I let stay because I felt sorry for you. You're strong, brave, and capable. You belong here, not as a guest, but as part of this ranch."
Lonnie felt her chest tighten with emotion. She had never imagined anyone would say such words to her. For so long she had survived alone, never allowing herself to believe she could belong anywhere. Now hearing Samuel acknowledge her place here filled her with warmth and gratitude. The day went on with more chores, but the mood felt lighter. The storm had passed, leaving the ranch safer, cleaner, and more beautiful than it had been in weeks. Lonnie found herself moving with confidence, guiding the younger animals, checking the feed, and helping repair fences with skill and efficiency. Samuel observed her quietly, noticing the determination in her eyes and the ease with which she adapted to challenges. She had become more than just a helper. She was a partner in maintaining the ranch, someone whose presence strengthened the place rather than simply filling a role. During a break in the afternoon, they sat under the shade of the mesquite tree, enjoying a simple meal together. Lonnie listened as Samuel spoke about his years on the ranch, sharing stories of the land, the cattle, and the lessons he had learned from both success and failure. Lonnie realized that these stories were more than just entertainment. They were guidance, wisdom handed down from someone who understood the land and the demands of life in the desert. She felt lucky to be learning not just the practical skills, but also the values and lessons that came with living and working here. After lunch, Samuel asked her to help with a small project near the barn. A corner of the shed had been damaged in the storm, and they needed to reinforce it before the next rains. Lonnie worked with care, measuring the wood, hammering the nails, and adjusting the panels as needed. Samuel watched her, impressed by her focus and precision.
"You've really learned quickly," he said. "I didn't expect anyone to pick this up so fast."
Lonnie smiled, feeling proud. She had not only survived, but had grown, learning to face challenges with courage and determination. She realized that the ranch was no longer just a place to stay. It was becoming a home. As evening approached, they finished the day's work and began to feed the animals one last time. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the desert floor, and the sky was painted with soft shades of pink, orange, and purple. Lonnie felt a deep sense of contentment. She had come to the ranch seeking safety and guidance, but she had found something more: purpose, belonging, and the quiet confidence that she could survive and thrive. Samuel, too, felt a sense of satisfaction. In Lonnie, he had found not just help, but a companion whose courage, determination, and heart had earned his respect and trust. That night, as they sat by the small fire on the porch, Samuel spoke again. "You've come a long way, Lonnie. I know life hasn't been easy for you, and I know you've faced more challenges than most people your age. But you've shown me that strength isn't just about physical work, it's about courage, patience, and heart."
"You belong here because you've earned it, not because I felt sorry for you."
Lonnie felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. For so long she had struggled to survive, unsure if anyone would see her worth. Now she felt seen, valued, and safe. As the fire crackled and the desert night settled around them, Lonnie reflected on her journey. She thought about the days before the ranch, when she had wandered alone, uncertain and afraid. She remembered the fear, the loneliness, and the constant struggle to survive. But she also remembered the determination that had carried her this far, the strength that had guided her through difficult times. And now she had found a place where that strength could be nurtured and respected. The ranch was no longer just a refuge, it was a home. And Samuel was not just a guardian, but someone who believed in her potential and valued her presence. In the days that followed, life on the ranch settled into a new rhythm. Lonnie continued to learn and grow, taking on more responsibilities and becoming increasingly skilled in her work. She tended to the animals with care, repaired fences with precision, and even began to anticipate the needs of the ranch before Samuel had to instruct her. Each day brought new challenges, but she faced them with courage and confidence. The bond between her and Samuel grew stronger, built on mutual respect, trust, and shared experiences.
She was no longer the scared, uncertain girl who had arrived at the ranch. She was now a capable, confident young woman with a purpose she could call her own. One afternoon, as they walked together along the pasture, Samuel spoke quietly.
Lonnie, I want you to know that this ranch is yours, as much as it is mine. You've earned your place here, and I trust you. You don't have to fear being alone anymore. You have a home, work you're good at, and a life you can build.
Lonnie felt her heart swell with gratitude. She had finally found stability, safety, and a sense of belonging that she had longed for. The ranch had become more than just a place to survive. It was a place to thrive, to learn, and to grow. As the sun set and the stars began to twinkle above the desert, Lonnie sat on the porch with Samuel, feeling the calm of the evening settle over them. She looked out at the land, the animals grazing quietly and the fences standing firm. She felt a deep sense of pride in what they had accomplished together, a sense of peace she had never known before.
Life on the ranch was not always easy, but it was honest, fulfilling, and meaningful. She had found a place where she was valued, respected, and capable.
That night, as Lonnie lay on her cot, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She thought about the fear, the uncertainty, and the struggles she had faced, and she realized how far she had come. She had arrived at the ranch seeking safety and guidance, but she had found much more: strength, courage, and a sense of belonging. She had discovered that life could be hard but rewarding, that challenges could be met with determination, and that trust and respect could be earned through hard work and honesty. For the first time in a long while, Lonnie allowed herself to dream of the future. She imagined continuing to learn and grow on the ranch, becoming even more skilled and confident. She imagined the animals thriving under her care, the fences standing strong, and the land remaining a place of beauty and purpose. She imagined a life where she was no longer just surviving, but truly living. A life where she belonged, where her strength and determination were recognized and valued. Samuel, too, reflected on the changes he had seen. He thought about the young woman who had arrived at his ranch, weary and uncertain, and he marveled at how much she had grown. She had faced storms, both literal and metaphorical, with courage and determination. She had proven herself capable, resourceful, and resilient. Most importantly, she had become a part of the ranch, a trusted companion whose presence strengthened the land and the life they shared. In the weeks that followed, Lonnie and Samuel continued to work side by side, building a life that was both challenging and fulfilling. The ranch became a place of stability, safety, and growth, where each day brought new lessons and opportunities. Lonnie had found a home, a sense of belonging, and the quiet confidence that came from knowing she was capable and valued. Samuel had found a companion, someone whose courage and determination inspired him, and whose presence brought warmth and connection to his life.
As the seasons changed and the desert shifted from the dry heat of summer to the cool breezes of autumn, Lonnie and Samuel continued to thrive on the ranch.
They faced challenges together, celebrated successes together, and built a life grounded in trust, respect, and shared experience. The journey that had begun with fear and uncertainty had transformed into one of hope, belonging, and purpose.
Lonnie had finally found a place where she could survive, grow, and truly live, a place where she belonged. And in the quiet moments, when the sun set and the stars filled the sky, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had arrived at the ranch seeking safety and guidance, but she had found something far more valuable: a home, a purpose, and a life worth living. She had discovered the power of trust, the strength within herself, and the beauty of belonging. And in that discovery, she had found the true meaning of survival, courage, and hope.